Welcome to the Authority Podcast. My name is Dr. Sanford Richmond. Today I welcome back Charles Thompson to the show. Again, he's a multiple award-winning investigative journalist based in the UK. He's also been a Michael Jackson writer and historian for over a decade. He's back to extend our discussion about Michael Jackson and the aftermath of HBO's Leaving Neverland. So Charles, welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
No problem. After our first interview, I wanted to have you on my show again immediately for a few reasons. One, you were just simply outstanding in your clear-cut and precise breakdown of all things Michael Jackson. You were great. Also,
thank you.
Also, I had questions that I wanted to ask you in the first interview that I never got a chance to ask because we were running out of time. So, and lastly, our interview has been a hit on Twitter and social media. The response we are getting from Michael Jackson fans has been overwhelming and just remarkable. I personally want to thank all the Michael Jackson fans around the world for their support. So I want to keep this momentum and energy going from our first interview. So I want to thank you again for being on my show.
It was a pleasure.
Oh yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. I want to begin where we ended on the previous show with regard to public sentiment. You emphatically said that Michael Jackson is winning every poll. Now when you said that, it's not like I didn't want to believe you, but I was hesitant to jump on board with what you said, because when it comes to the name Michael Jackson, I don't trust people necessarily. Every story that is negative about Michael Jackson, people seem to want to believe it. So I would just believe that most, or at least half of the people in America and around the world would just believe this documentary and move on. I knew Michael Jackson fans across the country and across the world are specifically fighting for his innocence and the protection of his legacy. But those are Michael Jackson fans specifically. I don't trust the general public or the media when it comes to Michael Jackson. But a few things happened after our interview to make me say that, maybe Mr. Thompson is onto something. So the very day of our interview, I remember it was a couple weeks ago, that very day, there was a controversy here in Los Angeles about a Gardner Elementary School. And for the people who don't know, this is a school that Jackson briefly attended when he was in 6th grade in 1969. 20 years later, in 1989, Gardner Elementary decided to name the school auditorium after Jackson. After the airing of Leaving Neverland, a vote took place, according to the LA Times, between the parents and school staff. Some parents wanted the name taken down after the documentary. So ultimately, there was a vote amongst the parents and school staff, and the vote resulted in keeping his name on the school auditorium. This vote to keep his name on the auditorium happened about 2 days after our interview. So that is that part. Then I just saw the other day Harvey Levin on TMZ talking about how Leaving Neverland didn't have that mute Michael Jackson effect that a lot of people thought it would, like it did R. Kelly. Harvey Levin, he looked so disappointed while saying this. He is practically admitting that all of the scumbag efforts of TMZ to try to instigate, initiate, activate, and just bring about Jackson's downfall in the wake of the documentary failed miserably. So Charles, this is to you. So going from what you said about Michael Jackson winning every poll in our last interview to seeing the mute Michael Jackson efforts backfiring, what do you make of all this?
Well, it's been a pleasant surprise, actually, because I was anticipating, before the documentary aired, I was saying to people, who I know who are kind of in the Michael Jackson camp, I was saying, you need to brace yourself, because this is probably going to wipe him out.
Right.
This is going to be it. We're never going to hear him on the radio again, because of the era we're in, the Me Too era, where you can't question an allegation, because if you do, you're immediately set upon by a crazy bunch of pro-victim loony people who
Exactly.
insist that nobody ever makes anything up and so on.
Right.
So I did really think in advance that this was going to be the end of the whole Michael Jackson legacy. I thought it was dead. But in fact, it's been basically a damn squib.
Mm-hmm.
The documentary's not done anything like, I think, what they thought it would. In fact, one of the guys who's credited, if you look at the credits of the film, there's a guy on there called, I think his name is Daniel Pearl.
Okay.
And he's a Channel 5 producer here in the UK. He makes TV shows like, the world's bustiest strippers and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Not
a very credible person. Right.
Yeah. But Dan Reed, he credited in a couple of interviews Daniel Pearl with being the person who suggested that they do this Michael Jackson documentary.
Okay.
And he's actually in the credits. I don't know quite what for. But he tweeted a couple of days before the documentary aired. He said, "This is what we're going to see in the next few days. The Michael Jackson Estate's official exhibition is going to be shut down. The West End musical is going to be shut down. His music is going to be banned from every radio station." And it just hasn't happened. And this is a guy that is credited as having worked on the documentary. So this is clearly what they were hoping would happen.
Right.
I think what they were hoping for was a response akin to the Harvey Weinstein response, where all of a sudden you have another person coming out and then another person coming out and then another person, and it's just this huge snowball that keeps getting bigger and bigger, and in the end it destroys Michael Jackson. I think Dan Reed thought he was going to win a Pulitzer or something.
Right.
But in fact, it's just been a complete catastrophe for them because it's not had anything like the impact that they thought it would. There's been like a handful of radio stations in the whole world who've actually banned the music, and but like 99.9% are still playing it.
Right.
And in the meantime, the documentary's been completely discredited online. It's not done anything like the numbers I think that they thought it would. When you consider that in the UK, it got 2 million viewers. Now, 2 million viewers in the UK is not good. Right. I mean, that's less than a Saturday night, 11 o'clock in the evening repeat of a 20-year-old sitcom. is rubbish, know, and that's after a month of free publicity. I mean, for a month, every single day there was something in the newspaper about this documentary, and still, when it aired, it got like paltry viewing figures. In across Europe, it was failing to even crack the top 10, or in some countries even the top 20 TV shows in terms of ratings for the day that it aired. So I think it's just been a complete letdown. And I think you see that in Dan Reed's behavior online, although he's calmed down a bit now, but you were seeing that in the way he was acting out and kind of trolling fans on Twitter and just being a bit juvenile. And you see it every now and then. There'll be another wave of blue tick people on Twitter who suddenly decide that they want to start promoting it again. You'll just get a flurry of them in a couple of days. 10 blue tick people going, "Wow, I've just watched that Michael Jackson documentary." But it's just done nothing, really. It's done nothing.
So what's happening here? I mean, on a previous show, I said that Robson and Safechuck are being proven to be sociopathic, pathological liars as the weeks and months pass by. Is that happening here, or did the Me Too movement underestimate the global Michael Jackson fan base, or is it a little bit of both?
It could be a little bit of both, or it could also be just symptomatic of the public's general growing distrust of the media. I mean, look at Donald Trump. His catchphrase is fake news. Right. And what began as a kind of a goofy catchphrase for Donald Trump is now common parlance. You see that online all the time. People saying this is fake news, something else is fake news. People don't really trust their media anymore. And sometimes with good reason. I mean, it's not healthy to distrust the media because the media is there to offer democratic scrutiny, and if you don't have a free press, then you're just inviting totalitarianism. You need to have a free press that challenges politicians and scrutinizes police and all that kind of thing. But unfortunately, decades of abuse of the trust that the public puts in the press has engendered a widespread distrust of the press. And a lot of people just don't buy it anymore. And this is what I was saying also about, I can't remember if I said it on your show or somewhere else, but there's a big discrepancy in the age of people who do and don't believe these allegations. You tend to find that those who disbelieve them are younger. They're kind of from the younger tech-savvy generation that goes online and does their own research and does their own fact-checking and is not beholden to traditional media like newspapers, because they've never bought a newspaper in their life. They don't come from that generation.
Right.
So they don't have the faith in the traditional media that older generations do, and they are more capable of going and doing their own research. So when you look at Twitter, there is a very clear divide, I think, in people's reaction to the documentary and their age. And you tend to find that the ones who are frothing at the mouth and insisting it's all true are kind of older, more generally more right-wing sort of people, of affluent, white, rich, right-wing. And then you've got the younger generations who traditionally are more liberal, more free-thinking, more tech-savvy, more able to do their own research, less beholden to the traditional media. And they're saying, hang on a minute, this doesn't add up.
Right.
That's been my observation. So I think that there's a big part of that in there. I think it's all to do, or a lot of it is to do, with people's relationship with media. And I think what you saw, certainly in the UK, I can't speak for the US because I don't live there, so I don't see the US newspapers. But in the UK, I see the newspapers every day. And what you were seeing, I think, in the build-up to and the immediate aftermath of the documentary airing here, was the tabloid media trying to flex its muscles and demonstrate that it's still got it.
Right.
Trying to say, we still have the power to make and break stars.
Right.
And so it was kind of pathetic in a way. It was kind of like they were trying desperately to show that they're still powerful, and it just all fell apart. It just made them look ridiculous, because the fact is they're not really powerful anymore. The percentage of the population that buys their newspaper is far, far, far diminished compared to what it was decades ago. The generation that buys newspapers is slowly dying out, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, because I work in newspapers and it's destructive, and what it does is it actually destroys journalism, and any good journalism you might have got will slowly disappear as the money disappears out of the industry. But I think it was kind of a pathetic, kind of a pathetic attempt by the tabloids to say, look, we've still got the power. We're going to destroy Michael Jackson. We're going to take down the biggest name in history. And then they just didn't, and it just made them look kind of feeble and rubbish.
Well, Harvey Levin had that same look on his face. TMZ, they kind of thought you should have saw it when the documentary first came out. It was. They were so happy. They were gleeful in like trying to destroy, like they knew they were going to be part of destroying, like you said, history, the biggest entertainer ever. And when I look at Harvey Levin's face the other day, I mean, he looked like he wanted to cry. I mean, and I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to exaggerate or nothing, but it just didn't work. So it's happening here in America. What you're saying is happening in the UK as well.
Well, it's very similar to, what happened when the verdicts came in the Michael Jackson trial in 2005. I mean, Tom Mesereau said that he looked around the courtroom after Michael was acquitted, and there were certain reporters in the courtroom who just looked like they wanted to cry because they'd invested themselves so much in a conviction. Right. And the fact that he wasn't convicted basically destroyed all of their future plans, because their plan was, great, I'm going to write a book, Right. Oh, they'll option the movie rights, you know.
All right, and it was all that. Detail. Like I think there was going to. I mean, it was a lot of people like they're going to detail his time in prison. They were going to make that little series. They had the the guns blazing when that trial happened, and it didn't work, and it looks like the same results are happening now, and I mean, I love it. So I want to ask you this. As a person who investigated multiple child sex abuse cases, I know this is a loaded question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So I mentioned my godfather, Bobby Adams, was the head of his security for over a decade. And just to be precise, he shared duties as head of the Jackson security detail from 1971 to 1984. Okay. So my godfather was also a 30-year member of the LAPD. So I want people to keep that in mind as well. So Bill Whitfield and his security team, the Nation of Islam, and the multiple security teams he has had throughout his life, compared to the almost 2 decades of investigations by the LAPD, Child Protective Services, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff, and the 2 unannounced raids on his house, and of course, and most important, the FBI, is there a chance that something was missed? And what I'm trying to say is, could he, under all this law enforcement supervision that was either protecting him or investigating him, could he have still found a way to harm children, by your estimation?
I think that would be possible because,
right.
The allegations are that the abuse always happened behind closed doors. But
right.
The problem with that is that that's not what Wade and Jimmy are alleging.
Right.
Wade and Jimmy are alleging that Michael Jackson ran what they describe in their legal papers as the most sophisticated child sex procuring network in history or something like that. So
right.
because they can't sue Michael Jackson because Michael Jackson is dead.
Right.
Okay. So they can't sue his estate because they're late. They filed their claims too late.
Okay.
So what they're doing now is they're having to sue companies which were linked to Michael Jackson when he was alive and which still exist today. So companies like MJJ Productions. So what they're having to do now in order to make that lawsuit viable is they're having to implicate those companies in the abuse so that it's legitimate for them to sue those companies for the abuse.
Okay.
So now they're claiming that Michael Jackson's entire business network was set up to procure children for him to abuse and to cover up his abuse of children. But the problem with that is it's plainly ludicrous because around Michael Jackson you have hundreds of people over the years who are, some of them are women with their own children.
Right.
Some of them are, as you say, ex-law enforcement. There's all sorts of people. And the idea that Michael Jackson could kind of divine in advance through some sort of, I don't know, psychic ability or something, that he was only able to hire people who would be completely fine with just ordering children for him to molest all the time and then covering it up. I mean, what kind of stupid story is that? That's impossible.
Exactly.
And where is the employee, just one? Where's the one employee who went, oh my God, and then ran to a police station?
Right.
There is no employee,
right.
So how did he manage to hire decades worth of mothers with their own children who were happy to supply him with children to abuse? None of it makes any sense. So, if the allegation was Michael Jackson is a lone wolf who seduces kids and abuses them, then is it possible that he could have done that behind closed doors without anyone knowing? Then, of course, that is possible.
Right.
But that's not what these guys in the documentary allege. They're saying that Michael Jackson's entire business operation was a front for what they call the world's most sophisticated pedophile network. So that is where the story falls down, really. That's their own allegation, and it's just plainly ridiculous.
But like I said, even going back to security, my godfather is a 30-year member of the LAPD. I mean, I think his spidey senses would have caught on to something. Bill Whitfield is an ex-law enforcement agent, and I guess my thing is, I guess you said it's always anything's possible. You're correct, but it's like, I mean, he died at 50 years old. Okay, let's put that in context. He died when he was 50 years old, and he's basically had around the clock security surrounding him for 40 of those 50 years. I mean, it's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it'd be extremely difficult. I mean, to be this relentless child predator that people are wanting him to be. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, particularly after 1993. So
Right.
you would think that if he was going to be able to get away with it, then maybe he would be able to get away with it pre-93 when there's
Right.
never been any suggestion of impropriety.
Right.
But the idea that you would have all of these people coming to work for him in the full knowledge after 1993 that he's previously been accused, and that they still wouldn't think anything was up.
Right.
You know, that he would still be able to just, freely abuse children all day, every day, and nobody would be noticing the signs is ridiculous. Clearly, everybody in the world knew after that point that he'd been accused of molestation.
Right.
So somebody like Bill Whitfield, who joined Michael's team far later than that,
Right.
if there was anything funny going on, then it would have been immediately apparent because, in fact, he joined Michael's team after the trial.
Right.
So, that's the first thing you'd notice. This guy's literally just come out of a massive child abuse trial. If there was anything going on that was improper, you would spot it straight away because it would be at the front of your mind. And of course there at least was one security guard who did turn on him.
Right.
I'm trying to remember his name, Ralph Chacon.
Okay.
But he was found to have a massive financial motive, and
Right.
his story turned out to be nonsensical.
Right.
And he was one of those who sued Michael Jackson for wrongful termination, and had previously said that he saw nothing inappropriate. But then once he was involved in litigation with Michael, changed his story
Right.
in order to try to obtain a settlement, lost his case, was absolutely rebuked by the judge as being a malicious time waster, and ended up with a multi-million-dollar bill for Michael Jackson's legal fees. And so had numerous gigantic motives for lying. So
Right.
his testimony was not really reliable.
Okay. So you mentioned lone wolf. You talking about Michael. You mentioned that. You said that term, lone wolf. I want to stay right there for a second. Stay at that part right there, lone wolf. And so, I mean, have you ever heard or seen one person, not one company, not one corporation, not one political organization, not one criminal organization, but one person so investigated by all these law enforcement agencies on a local, national, and international level, with the results generating absolutely nothing? Have you ever seen anything like that before?
No, and this is something that Michael's lawyer in the 2003 to 5 case was very vocal about.
Right.
Tom Mesereau, he said that more resources were plugged into investigating Michael Jackson than are invested into investigating most serial killers.
Yeah.
When they raided Neverland Ranch, they sent something like 80 sheriffs and 2 helicopters. Now, what is the purpose of a helicopter when you are searching for evidence of child molestation? Unless they're going to fly over the roof of a building
Right.
and painted on the roof, it's going to say Michael's child porn shed.
Exactly.
I mean, what is the use of a helicopter, and why do you need 80 sheriffs? Because although the ranch is big, in fact, the property on the ranch is actually quite modest.
Right.
Michael didn't live in some gigantic palatial mansion. He lived in quite a modest old wooden house. I mean,
Right.
it was a nice house, but it was not gigantic. So
Right.
why do you need 80 sheriffs? So, the resources that were plugged into pursuing him were completely disproportionate. And we know that the district attorney had sent investigators to multiple continents trying to solicit people to make allegations against Michael Jackson, not even because somebody had contacted them, but because he was just looking for people that might want to make an allegation,
Right.
which is totally disproportionate. and even down to when they arrested him, they created a website and put his mugshot on it. It was the whole thing was just ridiculous in terms of the resource and the effort that went into it, compared to, as I say, most kind of serial killer cases. It was just nuts.
I mean, our mafia. I mean, crime organizations. I mean, it just seemed excessive and excessive on purpose.
It was an obsession, I think. I think it was an obsession of the district attorney.
Tom Sneddon, right.
Who felt embarrassed because he failed twice to secure an indictment in the 93-4 case.
Right.
And I think he just made it his mission to bring down Michael Jackson. Why did he do that? Is it because Michael Jackson was a celebrity? Is it a racial thing? Is it because his ego was wounded by the failure to secure a conviction? Who knows? I mean,
or all the above.
Well, yeah, indeed. His nickname locally was Mad Dog. That was his name. They used to call him Mad Dog Sneddon.
Right.
And that was because he was known to be extremely obsessive. So once he got his eyes on someone and he wanted to bring them down, he would just pour everything into bringing them down. And there was an interesting profile feature that was written about him on the cusp of the trial in 2005. They went off and interviewed various people, and one of the people that they interviewed was the judge, and the judge said that the reason he's called Mad Dog is because he's a ferocious prosecutor, and it's known locally that sometimes he allows his emotions to get the better of him, and he becomes so invested in a case that he basically has to be pulled off of it because he loses his objectivity. And that was the problem with Tom Sneddon, was that he didn't know where the line was, and you saw that in the Michael Jackson investigation in the way that he repeatedly broke the law. He exceeded the terms of his own search warrant.
But it's good to be that way and know the media is on your side as well, too. I mean,
the media was completely on his side.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
Certain elements of the media were actively working in conjunction with the prosecution.
Exactly.
I mean, they were supplying the prosecution with witnesses.
Right.
They were putting out stories which were not true to smear Michael Jackson. At one press conference, Tom Sneddon actually said, "Right, I'm going now. If anyone else has got any questions, just ask Diane Diamond."
Yeah.
They were basically working as a partnership.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I'm just saying, so you could be that way and get away with it when the national media is trying to destroy the same man that you're trying to destroy. So he had a willing co-conspirator with him in the national media, so to speak.
In the international media, I would say.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there was, he broke the law repeatedly.
Of course,
they illegally raided the office of the defense PI, breached attorney-client privilege.
Right.
And they illegally removed defense documents from the home of Michael Jackson's assistant. They were clearly labeled as defense documents. They took them anyway.
Right.
They exceeded the terms of their own search warrant. Then there was the whole issue of whether he'd planted fingerprint evidence by mishandling evidence in the courtroom. And any one of those issues should have been seized upon by the media because they're enormous problems.
Right.
But the media just completely ignored it or kind of acted like, it doesn't matter because it's Michael Jackson and we all want him brought down anyway. So, yeah, I mean, his behavior was completely outrageous on numerous occasions. Even the initial press conference where he called Michael Jackson Jacko Wacko.
Yeah.
And then said, if you got any more questions, ask Diane Diamond.
Right.
I mean, it was just ridiculous the way he was behaving at that press conference. He was totally unprofessional and biased, but the media was not pulling him up on it at all. They were all going along with it and laughing along.
Right.
It was despicable, really, when you watch it. It was a whole press corps that was completely failing to do its job.
Well, let's talk about, because you mentioned Tom Sneddon in the 1993 case. Let's talk about that for a second. So let's talk about Taj Jackson for a second. For the few people who don't know, Taj Jackson is the nephew of Michael and the son of Tito Jackson and has been the leader of the Michael Jackson army, so to speak, in defending his uncle in the aftermath of Leaving Neverland. He is also working on a documentary to counter Leaving Neverland and all of the accusations that has been levied against Jackson throughout the years to prove his uncle's innocence and vindication. What seems to set him off and make him angry, Taj Jackson, is when he hears the theory where there's smoke, there's fire. And in our previous interview, you break down in meticulous detail the first charges levied against him in 1993 regarding Jordy Chandler. And you said that the Jordy Chandler charges are ground zero of all the accusations that will come afterwards against Michael Jackson. So I guess my question is, the where there is smoke, there is fire theory related to Michael Jackson. Is Taj Jackson justified in his anger when he hears that?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, that phrase anyway, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
I just despise it. It's the stupidest phrase. I call it the mating call of a moron. It's just so ridiculous.
Right.
You know, because if you want to live your life by the mantra of where there's smoke, there's fire, well, then all I have to do is accuse you.
Right.
And then now, by your own logic, that means you did it.
That's true.
So, you know, it's just
I never thought of it that way, but okay, I like that. Go ahead.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, most people think that where there's smoke, there's fire. Most people live their lives that until they become caught up in the justice system, right?
Or someone they love. But go ahead, right?
Exactly. And then they realize that the entire system is set up at every single stage to destroy you.
Right.
And that the only thing that can save you is a panel of 12 jurors, probably at least 10 of whom, like you, think that there's no smoke without fire.
Exactly.
And then you go, oh shit, right? So that's when you realize that that this is a goofy
stupid,
a goofy belief system, right? So, you know, so with Michael Jackson, right? Okay, so where there's smoke, there's fire, right? So you've got the first accuser insists he's not abused, tells investigators he was not abused, tells investigators that his dad is just looking for money. Meanwhile, the dad is on tape saying that he wants money, saying, I've told Michael Jackson what I want, and if I don't get it, I'm going to destroy him. Right. And then he's drugged, he changed his story, and then he gives a description of Michael Jackson's genitals that doesn't match the reality. And then eventually his dad extracts money and they stop cooperating with the authorities. And later he legally emancipates himself from both of his parents and then starts telling everybody he knows that Michael Jackson never touched him. That is the smoke.
Right, exactly.
That is rubbish. That's a rubbish case. It's ridiculous. And to say there's no smoke without fire based on Jordy Chandler is ludicrous. And Jordy Chandler is, as I said, ground zero. Everything springs from Jordy Chandler. Every subsequent allegation is modeled on Jordy Chandler. And if you don't believe the Chandler case, then everything else that comes afterwards is immaterial. It would be an enormous coincidence for somebody to falsely accuse somebody of a crime. And it turns out they're innocent of that, but they've actually been doing the same crime to loads of other people. That would be somewhat coincidental. So if, you know, logic dictates that if the Chandler case doesn't stand up, then why would any subsequent case be true? So it just, and then of course you look at each subsequent case on its merits and they all fall down anyway. But yes, there's no smoke without fire.
Stupid. It's very stupid term.
It's just an imbecilic comment, and I'm very suspicious of anybody who ever says that to me. I just think, oh right, you're thick then.
Oh man. Okay, so let's talk about that theory being believed by the media. So the mainstream media here in America is, especially liberal media outlets like, ironically, HBO, The Washington Post, The New York Times, The Daily Beast, The Atlantic, Vox.com, etc. They are patting themselves on the back for standing up to the Donald Trump administration, which to an extent I agree with, because somebody must expose the corruption of this administration that happens on a daily, if not hourly basis. The liberal mainstream media are claiming they are fighting to live in a world of facts and transparency. Exactly.
Yeah.
They're fighting this era of post-truth that Trump is trying to impose and force upon America and the world. And for the most part, they are standing up to Trump and exposing the lies and corruption of his administration. So I'll give him credit for that. But when it comes to Michael Jackson, these same outlets don't follow the same rule of facts and transparency. And these same media outlets that are patting themselves on the back and claim they are fighting for Americans by standing up to Trump, to the Trump administration, and fighting for truth, are the same ones trusting the merits of Leaving Neverland without any scrutiny or intense investigative journalism or research. So the same media liberal outlets standing for truth and facts when it comes to Trump are the same ones systematically rejecting any stories of truth, evidence, and facts that might vindicate Michael Jackson. What do you make of all that?
Well, that's very true.
Yeah.
And the media kind of wants to have its cake and eat it. It
Right.
wants to pat itself on the back and congratulate itself on being an amazing fact-finding mechanism. But
Right.
as you say, then on a different issue, and sometimes the same edition of the newspaper, they'll get everything wrong.
Exactly.
Or even engage in overt propaganda and distortion. And a part of it, as you said, is the liberal media.
Yeah.
And part of it is that the liberal media has a problem because the Me Too movement, if they want to be seen as liberal, they cannot question the Me Too movement.
Right.
They can't do it because the moment you question the Me Too movement, you are accused of being, propping up the establishment, attacking victims, all that kind of stuff.
Let me just say this real quick. The liberal media hated Michael Jackson before the Me Too movement, and the Me Too movement, it just gave them a better excuse. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, that
right.
is true.
Right.
Although I would say it was more prevalent in the less liberal media.
Correct.
But yes, but it certainly has got worse now, I would say. And I do think a lot of it is based on the kind of the times that we live in.
Correct.
The kind of politically correct, political correctness is a good thing, but the obsessively politically correct, and to the point where, as I say, anybody who questions an allegation is just attacked.
Right.
Because if you question an allegation, then you're re-victimizing the victim and all that stuff. The fact is, people make false allegations, and the liberal media wants to pretend that they don't.
Right.
It wants to close its eyes and stick its fingers in its ears and pretend that nobody's ever made a false allegation. People make false allegations
all the time,
every single day. And there's I saw a lot of people when it was being discussed about Wade Robson and Jimmy Safechuck, they're suing Michael Jackson's estate for a sum which is likely to, it's at least tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
It's likely to exceed $100 million. Okay. Because if you look at the methodology that Wade Robson is laying out for how he wants his damages calculated, he's saying that he was on course to have one of the greatest and most stunning careers in the history of entertainment, and that his abuse at the hands of Michael Jackson has robbed him of his future and his fortune, and he needs to be compensated. So now, if you look at that, there were a lot of people saying, as if somebody would make up an allegation for millions of dollars. There's a guy in court right now in Britain who is accused of having falsely accused about 10 celebrities for sexually abusing him as a child.
10?
In order to extract £20,000. So about $27,000, right, in compensation. Now, and as I've said on other shows, people mug 80-year-old women on pension day for £100. You know what I mean? So the idea that somebody wouldn't make up an allegation for millions of dollars is just stupid.
Right. Absolutely.
But the media wants to pretend like the idea of somebody making a false allegation is is ridiculous.
Right.
And why would they do that? As if somebody would do that. People do it every single day for the stupidest reasons. I've sat in cases where people have made up allegations for various reasons. I sat in a case where a teenage girl, did it because she didn't like her mum's new boyfriend. I sat in a case where a boy accused an older man of rape because he was embarrassed that people would find out that he had consensual sex with him because the guy was so old, right? So I've sat in these cases. People make up false allegations for numerous reasons every day.
Oh man! See, and in response to the media ignoring this and what everything you just laid out. So I talked about Michael Jackson fans responding to our interview in an overwhelming and remarkable way. I asked Bill Whitfield this. I'm gonna ask you this: what do you make of MJ fans around the world and their response to Leaving Neverland? I mean, like amongst MJ fans, there appears to be this universal feeling of just being fed up. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there's something I've noticed about this documentary actually is it's unified the fan community in a way that it has not been unified in about a decade.
Okay.
Because of various things that happened that split the community in two. For example, when the estate released some fake songs and people were saying, do we support the estate or do we attack the estate, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, I know.
So there were...
Okay. Yeah,
there were various issues going on which split the fan community.
Okay.
Now, what this documentary has done is it's given the community something which everybody can unite behind, because whether you like the estate or you don't like the estate, or you like the family or you don't like the family or whatever, you know, one thing everybody's in agreement on is that what's happening here is not fair and it's not right, and it needs to be challenged. And so the community has come together in a way which I have not seen since he died, I don't think.
Okay.
So it has been an interesting phenomenon to watch, and it's been very positive, and it has affected change. You know, I mean, there were radio stations in some countries which banned his music, and the fans' reaction was so strong that they put it back on again. You know, there have been other instances where that's happened, where there's kind of muting or whatever. You know, the Mute Michael Jackson campaign has been reversed by fan activity.
Right.
So you know, it's been quite an effective direct action campaign, and it's been good to watch.
Right. What do you make of Taj Jackson saying you are an all-star when it comes to defending his uncle? He said on another show, you're, quote, the best of the best. So, I mean, what do you think about Taj Jackson and the Jackson family having so much faith and trust in you, speaking about Michael's reputation, innocence, and legacy as a whole? How does that make you feel?
Well, it's nice to hear.
Right.
I mean, it's good in a way, it's gratifying because I have been doing this. I've been defending Michael Jackson against these stupid allegations since, well, you know, for well over 10 years. So as a result of that, I've ended up kind of getting to know some of the family, but I never did it because I knew them. I didn't know them. I came at it, you know, when I was, for example, when I wrote the Huffington Post piece in 2010, on the 5th anniversary of the verdict, I had never met or conversed with or had anything to do with any of the Jackson family. So, you know, the fact that they've come to me through my work and that they're happy with it is good. It's always nice to hear when somebody is, you know, praising your work. But at the same time, that's not why I do it, and it's never been why I've done it, and I've just done it because I think it's the right thing to do. But you know, I now know Taj, and I'm quite friendly with Taj, and I'm happy about that because he's a very nice person and a very good person, and so he's a good person to know.
Well, I think what makes people feel good about you, you know, the response I'm getting from, you know, social media about you, what I've seen. I mean, I've seen the response you've been getting last maybe couple weeks, few months, as a matter of fact. What's good about you? And I'm just letting you know this, just from me as a Michael Jackson fan, and I'm sure the family even feels 100 times even more of this feeling is that you're not really talking off emotion. You're talking off facts. Like you're following the facts, and you're not. It's not like you have an emotional investment one way or the other, and you're letting the facts guide your opinions, guide your assessment, and it's coming out, not good for, I guess, like I said, the mainstream media and the general public who wants to think negative of them. But you're saying, you're speaking truth without being, I guess, slanted. You know what I'm talking about, and I guess people appreciate that.
Yeah.
And they don't have enough media. There's not enough media people in the world, in America and around the world, doing that.
Well, I think you're right in
Right.
a sense. Yeah. So I don't. For example, you'll never see me say anywhere, I know Michael Jackson's innocent. I've never said that, right? Because I don't know.
Right.
I wasn't in the room, and I don't know.
Right.
So, but my position is, can you prove it?
Right.
That's the philosophy that a civilized society lives by.
Right.
Unless somebody is proven guilty beyond any reasonable doubt, then they're innocent. And not only has Michael Jackson never been proven guilty beyond any reasonable doubt, but the doubt is all-consuming. The doubt is astronomical.
Right.
If you were to put the doubt on a set of scales against the allegations, it would crash through the floor. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Is it conceivably possible that these accusers are telling the truth? It's conceivably possible,
Right.
but if it's true, why do they keep lying?
Right.
Why do they keep committing perjury? Why are they contradicted by the evidence? Why are they contradicted by other witnesses? Why have they all got histories of fraud and perjury?
Right.
There's all these problems. Why do they never just go to the police? Why do they always want millions of dollars?
Right.
There's all sorts of problems with these allegations, and the problem is, if you look at these allegations and you're prepared to accept them,
Mm-hmm.
then it basically means that nobody who is innocent can ever defend themselves.
Right.
If the burden is so low that we're prepared to just accept the allegations against Michael Jackson with all of these gigantic holes in them,
Right.
and fissures in the logic where you're just going, well, none of this makes any sense whatsoever, or the timelines don't add up, or whatever, then how does an innocent person, even if you assume, let's just for the argument's sake, assume Michael Jackson is guilty, right? But, if you were innocent and you had the same set of evidence,
Right.
how would you ever defend yourself if this is the burden? You look at James Safechuck. He tells a story in the documentary about Michael Jackson spent Thanksgiving 1987 at my house.
Right.
Michael Jackson on Thanksgiving 1987 was not only at not at James Safechuck's house. He was not only not even in America. He was on the other side of the planet in Australia on stage being filmed in a concert in the middle of an Australian concert tour. He was categorically nowhere near James Safechuck's house at Thanksgiving. Now, if you've got a case where the defendant, call Michael Jackson the defendant, is provably on the other side of the planet, and the accuser is saying he was in his house, and people are going to go, oh, well, it's just, of course he's going to make some mistakes because of the trauma of being abused. We'll just convict him anyway.
Right.
That means that an innocent person who was on the other side of the planet, now they can't, it's just like, oh, well, who cares if you're on the other side of the planet? You can't defend yourself. No innocent person can defend themselves.
Right.
So if you're prepared to throw Michael Jackson under the bus on the strength of these allegations, which are just so riddled with problems, then what you're basically doing is saying that no person can ever be innocent.
Right.
Everybody, if you literally, even if you're on the other side of the planet, you're still guilty.
Right.
Where does that leave an innocent person? So that's my problem with it, really, is it's terrifying to watch these allegations being accepted and excused, to watch all of the problems with these allegations just being excused and dismissed. It's just terrifying because you think, God, what if I was on trial?
Right.
What if somebody falsely accused me and I was on trial, and the jury were being told, oh, you can disregard all of these problems with the evidence because that's just the trauma of abuse. That it just means you can't defend yourself. nobody can ever defend themselves again.
Similar to the train station discrepancy, isn't there something? I just heard something where a Euro Disney was it something Euro Disney? Was there something where
there was a story online that James Safechuck said that he was taken a honeymoon Michael Jackson Euro Disney like 4 years before Euro Disney opened or something like that.
Right.
But I don't think that was borne out by the documentary. Now, I don't know if James Safechuck made that comment somewhere else, but I've not been able to verify it. Because I did see that and share that like 2 months ago. But actually it didn't seem to be borne out by the documentary, so I'm not quite sure on the provenance of that claim. But there are other discrepancies. So they describe being abused in a teepee at Neverland when the period they're talking about there were no teepees. They describe visiting the elephant in Michael Jackson's zoo when at the time he did not own an elephant. So there are other discrepancies in the documentary.
Isn't there a part, I think Brandy Jackson said this, like where James Safechuck said he had sex with him in a pool with all these video, but like wouldn't it, and like with all these video cameras, like all these video cameras around the pool, but somehow Michael Jackson had sex with him with all the video cameras showing, all the video cameras working, but not showing this part. I guess. Yeah. Right.
And he used to have a security hut at the ranch where security staff were monitoring those cameras 24/7 because of the number of people that used to try to break into his ranch.
Right.
Number of fans that used to try to get in. So, what the allegation there is, again, is you've got security staff who are just quite happy to watch Michael Jackson having sex with an 8-year-old boy in a swimming pool and do nothing about it. Now, again, how is Michael Jackson consistently able to hire everybody that comes into his sphere, from his makeup artists to his security to his chefs to his maids to his managers, his personal assistants, his nannies, everybody. It's just like, what phenomenal luck for Michael Jackson. Every single one of them is completely okay with him molesting children all the time. It's just stupid. It's a stupid proposition.
Right. So this is the last question. Has defending Michael Jackson affected your career one way or the other, positive or negative?
It's a kind of an unknowable thing.
Okay.
So no, that's not true. So in terms of has it had a negative effect, not that I know of, because I have never tried to move into the national media.
Okay.
And I'm not saying I never would, but it would take a very good and lucrative job offer for me to move into the national media. So it would have to be, for example, into some sort of investigative role which removed me from the running of the rest of the newspaper, because generally speaking, I view the national media as a propaganda factory.
Okay.
So we have going on in the UK right now Brexit, which I'm sure you've heard of, right?
Yes.
So Brexit
similar to the Trump phenomenon here in America, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Right?
Yes,
Brexit
absolutely
is total bullshit. So it was right-wing racist rhetoric that was peddled by the super rich, and the whole point of Brexit is to stitch up working people. So in Britain, a lot of the workers' rights that we have, so the right to paid holiday, the right to paid sick leave, etc., that all came from the EU, right? A huge pregnant women's workers' rights, etc. Now, it's now known that one of the main driving factors behind Brexit was the super rich trying to destroy workers' rights, because workers' rights cost them money. If you get sick and you can't come into work and they have to pay you anyway, that costs them money. They don't want to do that, right? So, for example, if you go on holiday and they have to pay you, that costs them money. If you have a health and safety issue and they have to change something about the workplace, then that costs them money. If similarly, a lot of the environmental regulations we live by in the UK come from the EU. So if a company is massively polluting the environment and is ordered to put in place measures which will mitigate the damage that they're doing to the environment, that costs them money. They don't want to do that. So a lot of the driving factor behind the Brexit movement was the super rich trying to extricate us from the EU in order that they can pollute and gas and kill us and also take away all of our workers' rights.
Wow.
Now, that's not going to work if you put it on the poster. So what they do is they tell you it's all about immigrants. It's all about the evil immigrants are coming over here. They're taking all the jobs. The reason you're poor is because of immigrants. The reason everything in your life has gone wrong is because of immigrants. You vote now, get rid of the immigrants, right? But that's not what it was about. It was all bullshit. Anyway, so our national media was completely complicit in that and was actually driving it, and that's not something I would ever want to be a part of. Then you have, for example, just look at their position on climate change. We have national newspapers in the UK who on a weekly basis publish mad conspiracy theory bullshit saying that climate change doesn't exist. Weekly basis. That's so dangerous. Why are they doing that? So that, again, that's not something I want to be involved in. Look at the coverage of Leaving Neverland. Oh my God. That's not something I want to be involved in. So in terms of the national media, I have never had any desire to go and work in the national media, because as an outsider looking at it, I just think, why the hell would I want to be involved with that? So unless they were going to bring me in and put me very specifically in an investigations department where I was going to be going off doing investigative journalism that had nothing to do with the day-to-day propaganda that they just pump out, I wouldn't really have any interest in going and working for them. So I can't really answer the question of has it prevented me from doing anything, because I've never tried to do anything that it would have prevented me from doing. So has it helped me? I wouldn't say it's helped me professionally, but it's had fantastic implications for my life, generally speaking. I've made great friends out of it. I now count Taj as a friend. Taj is a great person. I now count Tom Mesereau as a very good friend. Tom Mesereau is one of the greatest men you could ever meet. He's an incredible philanthropist. I always say he's a bit like Ned Flanders. I mean, he spent most of his career just working for poor people for little or no money. He is extremely dedicated to the proposition of equal justice and access to justice, and he's prepared to, work cases at a loss if it means it will keep an innocent person out of prison. He goes to the Deep South once a year and fights a pro bono death penalty trial, and never had a client go to the death penalty, get a death sentence. He's always succeeded in that sense. So he's a fantastic, inspirational person, and I now am friendly with him. So that's great. So it's had great implications for my personal life. In terms of my professional life, I've never, I work in the regional press, and I'm very happy working in the regional press. So it's never really impacted me. The only time it came in handy was when I graduated into the recession in 2009, and was working as a freelance and was doing showbiz reporting, and I was doing a bit of Michael Jackson reporting then. But I mean, that would be the only professional benefit I could point to, really, apart from my profile, of course, because I have a reasonable profile because of my standing within the Michael Jackson community, because they appreciate my work. So that's beneficial as well. So, for example, I'm nominated for an award right now. We find out tomorrow if we won, and it went to a public vote this week. It was it's all being done by public vote. They announced the winner tomorrow. Michael Jackson's fans have just gone like cuckoo. They've just been like starting massive campaigns, vote for Charles. So, I'll find out tomorrow if it worked. But that was great.
I love it. You gotta contact me tomorrow. Like, we gotta, email me, communicate with me somehow and see if that worked or not.
I'll let you know. Yeah. We find out. I'll know by this time tomorrow whether we've won.
Fingers crossed on that. I hope you win.
Well, thank you. Yes, yeah, me too.
You've been, of course, man. Yeah. So you've been excellent, man. Unfortunately, we could go on again for another hour probably, but unfortunately we out of time. So that's it for today. Charles, I wanna thank you. Thank you for your excellent breakdown and examination of Michael Jackson and Leaving Neverland, and for being an outstanding guest on my show once again.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure both times, and maybe we'll do it again.
Yes, we will do it again. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Be sure to rate and comment on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and a great comment, and we may read your comment in a future episode, so stay tuned for that. You can also email me at theauthority@gmail.com. That's TheAuthority@gmail.com. Theauthority@gmail.com. And you can also leave a comment, and I may read your comment in a future episode. You can also post comments on Twitter at Sanford Richmond, and my handle is at srichmond231. That's at SRICHMOND 231. This is The Authority Podcast. I want to thank you for listening, and join us again next time.